In this tutorial, I'm going to be following on from my line trace tutorial to cover how to do it with an interactable within the world. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have it where when you go up to this door, when you're looking at it and when you're in the vicinity of the door, you can then open it by pressing E. So currently, oh, that just bugged out, but currently you can open it and close it, but that's even if you're not looking at it. So what I want is also when I'm specifically looking at it, I can only open it then. So there's a little bit of setup for that. So what we need to do is in this, we want to make what's called a parent blueprint. So what this allows us to do is anything that's interactable in the world, it can come from this parent blueprint, which has stuff like a boolean for is it looking at it, and a function so when you do it, when you press E or whatever button it is to interact, no matter if it's a door or a pickup or a weapon, it goes through this interaction blueprint. So all I need to do is cast it through this interaction blueprint rather than having to do a thing of, is it a door? Yes, okay, do this. Is it a weapon? Yes, okay, do this. It all goes through this one blueprint. So if I make an actor blueprint and call it bp_interact, so we've got this parent blueprint now, and then we want to do two things in here. So a function called interact. This can then act as a custom event, which will make sense when we get to it. But make sure you make a function called interact, and then also a variable called is looking at. So are you currently looking at something that is within the BP interact structure? So once we've got that, we can go back to the door. And then there's a way to very quickly change the door's parent class. So if you click on class settings at the top, and then on the right, you can see parent class. So that's currently an actor, so generic, just blank actor. So what we can do is bp_interact, search that, and then it comes up with this. We can then change that, and it now becomes the parent class. So mine's already ticked here, but on the left, on the My Blueprint tab, where you can see all of this stuff, where you can add things and everything, at the top right of this window, you can see a cog. So here, and then click Show Inherited Variables. When you click this, you can see that there is the is looking at boolean that we've got from the interaction blueprint. And also, if we search event interact, this then comes from the function that we created in the parent blueprint. So this interact function, this can then act as a custom event. So in the first person character, when we get to it, when you press E, it will trigger this interact function, which will then trigger this event. So it can get a little bit complex, but as long as you can wrap your head around that, I think it should be all okay. So we've got the, I'll delete that. We'll be replacing this E with the interact later on. But we've got this set up now. We've got the door there, and we've got this. So what we want to then do is have it so when we're detecting the interaction blueprint, start to do some stuff with the line trace. So firstly, let's just go for it left from right. There might be things that I missed that I'll go back to, but what we want to do is the return value true or false? So is the line trace currently hitting something? So if we do a branch, and then if it's true, cast to BP interact. So are we currently looking at the interaction blueprint? So cast to it, go through the hit actor. So we want to link up object to hit actor on the break hit result, and then communicate with the blueprint. Is it going through BP interact? If it is, set a variable to current interact, let's say. You can name it whatever you'd like, but we've now got a variable where we've set it so whatever we're currently looking at is set to something. And then from there, because it's within that blueprint, we can set the boolean that we made in the interaction is looking at. We can then set that to true because we are looking at it. So set interaction true. So set is looking at to true. So we've got that where when we look at it, it's setting the booleans and we've got it all fine. But the issue is when we look away from it, it'll still be set to true. We've got nothing to say stop it from setting it to false. So this is the importance of why we've got a variable set. Because when we look away from it, this cast is then going to be false and we'll never be able to reference the hit actor because we're not looking at it anymore, which is why we've got a variable set so we can reference it even when we look away from it. So what we need to do is get the current interact variable that we just made there, drag off it and search is valid. So what this does is it stops loads of errors from showing up. So is valid is essentially a branch, but in a specific way for variables and things like that. So is the current interact valid? So is it currently none? Have we not looked at anything yet? Or are we currently not looking at anything? If it's none, then it's not valid. But if it is valid, so if we have got something set in current interact, then go through this line of code. So if we're not looking at something, so if the return value is false, if current interact is valid, so we have looked at something recently, then go through this and we can get this one again, or we can just drag off that. I like to keep it clean and put another one in just so there's no node things cutting through stuff. So current is looking at, set is looking at again, but set that to false. And then set current interact. So if we leave set current interact as nothing's linked up to it, once we set it, it'll set it to false. Set it to null, it'll be none. So that should all be fine, but another thing is if there's something directly behind the door or next to the door and we look quickly at that, it will also not run through this code because the return value will be true. So another thing, set the cast failed into the is valid node as well. So if we then just do a debug, so if we do a tick in the door and then print string, set the duration to 0 just so it's a constant number in the top left and it's not a string of loads of stuff, and then put that in there, we can test to see if this bit of code that we've just put in works. So it's false currently. When we go up to it, it's true, look away, false, look at it, true, false, true, false, true, false. So we've got that working where it's correctly referencing if we're looking at the door or not. So then what we need to do, so we can delete that from the door. What we then need to do is within the door, I've got it when I press E, I can open the door if I'm within this volume. What we then need to do is do a few little changes to make it where when we press E, here or somewhere, do the can open and is looking at. So if we're in the volume and also looking at, then run through this bit of code. If not, do nothing. And then we want event interact. So we've got it now where instead of it being when you press E at the door, it's the event interact. And then what we can do is so we can contain it all within the first person character. If we do keyboard E, you can set up a proper input, but just for the sake of this, I'm just going to quickly do it. So when I press E, current interact, get, and then if I just search interact there, I can call this function. So it might be worthwhile is valid again. So if I press E and there isn't a current interact set, don't do this. It might come up with errors again. So it should be now when I go up to it. I'm not looking at it. I can't open it. I'm looking at it, and now it's opening. Yeah. So we've got it where if we're far away from it, it doesn't open. When we're close to it and looking at it, it doesn't open or close. When we're looking away from it, it doesn't do anything. As soon as I look at it again, we can do something weird with the collision. But either way, so now we've got it where when we look at it and also when we're near it, we can interact. Otherwise, do nothing.